Terence Crawford, update on what's next for him, according to Mauricio Suleiman, the president of the WBC. And once again, sanctioning bodies confusing all the get out of boxing fans with this one. Let's talk about that and what he had to say about the Errol Spence Jr. fight not happening next in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to go through more confusion and a whole lot of confusion being thrown out by the WBC, Mauricio Suleiman, who updated what's going on with the welterweight division as it relates to their title for the 147-pound division. And he says that it is his understanding that the Terence Crawford-Errol Spence Jr. fight rematch is not happening next. And he is doing something as a result. But that result, what he's saying, is mighty confusing and seems ASS backwards. Before I get into it, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you're a longtime subscriber and supporter, thank you so much for your continued support. It makes a huge difference in the channel. So thank you guys, especially to everybody that supports in the super thanks. But let's get into this, man, and thank you to everybody that does. If I don't say your name specifically in this video, understand I greatly appreciate you. But let's get into this because Mauricio Suleiman, who is the president of the WBC, World Boxing Council, gave some interviews yesterday circulating around Twitter right now, and he says some things that are funny to me. He says that his understanding is that the Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence rematch is not going to happen next. I don't believe he gave a source for that. That's what he said that he believes is the case. But as a result, he is going to give Terence Crawford time to figure out what it is that he's going to do. And that, in there lies the mystery for me. I like the IBF and what the IBF did. Unfortunately, it happened to Terence Crawford, but it was good for the other fighters that were involved, specifically Jaron Ennis, specifically Cody Crowley, who's now been ordered to fight Jaron Ennis in his first title defense of the IBF welterweight title. This thing right here is with Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. If Errol Spence Jr. is not going to fight Terence Crawford, or that's what WBC believes, then the WBC should order a fight with Terence Crawford and Mario Barios, or whoever it is that is atop that 147-pound division. And I'm not sure what there is to wait on, because Terence Crawford said that he was not going to be fighting at 147. He said that his next thing he wanted to do was go fight Canelo Alvarez. That fight's not going to happen, but he may campaign at 154 pounds. They talk about, Brian McIntyre talked about how Terence Crawford, would beat Keith Thurman and Tim Tszyu on the same day. So let's see it. Jermell Charlo is there at 154 pounds. Whatever the case is, those are the options that Terence Crawford says he's looking for. So I'm not sure what benefit it has for boxing to say, okay, let's wait around and wait for Terence Crawford to figure out what he's going to do. I don't think that that's the right move to do. Ask him what he's going to do, and if he doesn't have something on his plate, give him a amount of time and order a fight for a mandatory challenger. That's what they've had, is supposed to have had sitting there with the WBC for a while. Now, people are going to respond and ask me or make statements. Well, why weren't you saying this when Errol Spence Jr. was the WBC champion? Because and the answer to that is a simple, straightforward one. Errol Spence Jr. was waiting to fight Terence Crawford. Everybody knew what he was trying to do. He was trying to become the undisputed champion at 147 pounds. Terence Crawford won the fight, but Terence Crawford was also part of the reason why Errol Spence Jr. held on to the belts and didn't defend against mandatories for the WBC. Because of that. And you can't take Terence Crawford out of the equation when you look at how long people have been waiting. I said the same thing for the IBF championship with Jaron Ennis. Jaron Ennis was the mandatory for Errol Spence Jr. for certain, and it was for a while that he didn't get a fight, waiting on Errol and Terence Crawford to fight. But again, the reason why Jaron didn't get the fight was because Errol and Terence were waiting on a fight, waiting on a unification fight, not just Errol. So in order to get this boxing thing going, to see these fights take place, to see these champions fighting each other, I think it's a time where it's ish or get off, SHIT or get off the pot. Or at the very least, just decide what weight class you're going into. I thought Terence Crawford I was really appreciative of what Terence Crawford did at 140 pounds when he became the undisputed champion. And he immediately dropped the IBF belt, and it wasn't too long before he dropped all of the other belts to fight for the WBO title against Jeff Horn at 147 pounds. Made his mind up, did it relatively quickly. Let's keep it pushing. The welterweight division has a lot of fights that could take place in that division for championships. And it has been held up, very much held up for a couple years now, as far as those fighters coming up underneath Errol and Terence are concerned. Now, Terence, I think he should be able to get a shot at anybody at 154 pounds. If he doesn't fight Errol next, he should be able to walk right in and get a fight for he may be able to fight for I think the IBF belt maybe, or the WBC is vacant. So, I mean, there's Fundora there that he could move up and fight Fundora. Depending on what happens with March 30th with Fundora, he could fight Jermell Charlo when Jermell Charlo comes back. I think that is a very, very reasonable fight to take place for two belts that Terence could take right away, provided Jermell wanted to give him the fight, right? All of those things could take place, and it will move boxing on because, man, if you look at really what's going on in the first 3 months of this year, and the last 3 months of last year, so pretty much for the last 6 months, it's been almost devoid of really big fights. And Terence Crawford is something that is a big fight. It may not be Canelo Alvarez versus Floyd Mayweather big, but they're big fights. Same thing goes for Jaron Ennis. It's an important fight. It's a significant fight. The more these guys fight more often, the better it is for boxing. And the WBC, I have to tell you, to their credit, they do take their time and allow their champions a lot of leeway to figure out what they're going to do. That's why they created that franchise title at one for Canelo when Canelo was unsure about when he was going to or if he was going to fight Jermall Charlo. So they came up with the franchise championship. People didn't like the franchise championship. So now doesn't look like they're using the franchise championship anymore. They're also, the WBA is going away from the WBA super title as well for other reasons. But what difference does it make if you're going to have the mandatories order, but you're going to have mandatories and all of that, but you don't make them fight on a regular basis? I really wish that half of the fights would be mandatory fights. One voluntary, one mandatory. One voluntary, one mandatory. One voluntary, one mandatory. And keep it pushing. But whatever the case is, according to Mauricio Suleiman, he doesn't think that the fight with Errol Spence and Terence Crawford is going to happen next. So if Mario Barios is in that position, man, order the fight, man. Worst thing Terence Crawford is going to do is drop the belt and move to fight somebody else. And then just like what happened with Shakur Stevenson and Devin Haney, boom, that championship belt gets satisfied and gets filled with a voluntary with another fight ordered in its place. But that's my take on the matter. Please let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Deuces.